right, next up we'll go to Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. First of all, I know you have a manual flying demonstration during your transit to the space station. Can you talk about which of you is actually going to be flying the vehicle and your roles during the flight up to ISS for each of you? And also, you were both selected as astronauts in 2000, sort of in the heart of the shuttle program. Did you ever expect to be flying anything in space besides the shuttle when you joined the astronaut office?
All right,
Thanks.
next up we'll go to Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now.
For the manual flying, I'll be doing the manual flying as the Dragon Commander, and we will do a manual flying demo. The ISS, and it's certainly those tests are kind of two-person tests for sure, because there's a lot of back and forth between Bob and I, and we practice it quite a bit, and it's obviously something that we want to make sure we understand completely for future crews in case they ever have to fly the vehicle manually. As far as the second question,
I think both of us would really have been just over the moon if we had the opportunity when we first arrived to fly on a new spacecraft. And over the years, we've seen NASA complete the space station and then consider what the next steps were going to be. And so we've longed to be a part of a test mission, a test space flight, and Doug and I are lucky enough to get that opportunity going forward. So I would say it's something we maybe dreamed about when we were new ASCANs, flying something other than the space shuttle, the next vehicle. It did not seem likely at the time when we arrived in the astronaut office. There was a lot of assembly of the International Space Station that had to happen, and so we needed to get through that, and we were just excited to have our opportunities on those missions, and that happened many years ago. So I think we're living the dream, is what I guess astronaut Michael Fossum would have said if he was posed with that question.
Okay, next we're going to go to Dave Mosher with Business Insider.
Thank you guys for doing this, and best of luck on your flight. So you both said this is an experimental flight and basically an astronaut's dream to do a test flight, but there's still a good amount of risk in it. And I'm curious if and how mission management has shared LOC or LOM numbers with you, and what you think about those numbers, how confident you are moving forward with the test flight. Thank you.
3, 2,
I think whenever we hear those numbers, we dig a little bit deeper than just what the overall statistics might imply. And those numbers are best used as you kind of compare different ways of doing things or hardware changes that you might pursue or otherwise. We've had full information, I think, from the Commercial Crew Program, from the SpaceX team as we've gone forward with this. And so I think we've had the luxury over the last 5+ years to be deeply embedded in the understanding of the trades that were made. And as you probably understand, there are often cases where a hardware change can be implemented, or there can be an operational change that reduces that risk or manages it in some way. And so we've been deeply involved in that entire process. And so we did even get a chance over the last 2 days to duck our heads into the agency's flight readiness review and hear the discussions that the management teams were having about the overall risk or different ways of doing business with this mission itself. And so I think we're really comfortable with it, and we think that those trades have been made appropriately. And as far as Insight goes, we've had probably more than any crew has in recent history, just in terms of understanding the different scenarios that are on our plate.
Yeah, those numbers are certainly part of the equation when you assess risk, but they're certainly not exclusive by any stretch of the imagination. They change based on a lot of different design changes or just statistics as we move forward in a program. So they're certainly a factor, but there's just so much more to assessing risk and all those things that you need to put into the decision matrix before you go fly. But anyway.
I think one of the really unique things about the Dragon vehicle is the legacy that they have with cargo. So they have the team has that experience, as well as the Falcon 9 rocket that has what wasn't a long history when we started this program, but has kind of panned out to be quite a number of flights under its belt, and its evolution has become more and more safe as it's been operated, and that's something that we really do appreciate, and it's just remarkable to see all the other missions that have contributed to the human spaceflight program by, in some sense being a test mission for us before we had the chance to fly on the Falcon 9.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is all the time we have for questions, unfortunately. I apologize to those that we didn't get to, but since this is our last time to talk with Bob and Doug before we see them next week, we want to wish them luck, let them know we'll be cheering them on. And for those on the phone, you will need to hang up and dial into the next briefing. That's coming up here on NASA TV at 2:45, and will be the post-flight readiness review briefing. Again, we'll see you all back here on Launch Day, May 27th. Thanks.
Committee and also the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And now he's sharing that passion with all of us as he leads NASA into a new era of space exploration. Jim?
Well, thank you, Bob. It's great to be here at the Kennedy Space Center. We are, once again, launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. And this is a big moment in time. It's been 9 years since we've had this opportunity. And Bob Cabana, we want to thank you for all the great work you've done getting us up to this point, getting the Kennedy Space Center ready. Everything is looking good. We are, as of right now, we are go for launch. As Bettina said, the weather is about 60% favorable for launch tomorrow, which is good news. Compared to where we were yesterday, we were at 40%. So the trend is in the right direction. And we are very, very excited. So I think I'd like to start by saying, again, this room is empty. We would love to have this room full. We would love to have it filled with reporters. We'd love to have it filled with space enthusiasts. And unfortunately, we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. Our country has been through a lot. But this is a unique moment where all of America can take a moment and look at our country do something stunning again. And that is launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. And we're going to go to the International Space Station. And what we do there, of course, is we're transforming how we do spaceflight in general. The Commercial Crew Program is, in fact, about commercializing low Earth orbit. We've got resupply. Now we're going to have crew. Soon we're going to have commercial space stations. And this is a unique opportunity to bring all of America together in one moment in time and say, look at how bright the future is. That's what this launch is all about. And yes, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, we've taken extraordinary measures to keep our people safe, and we are one day away from launch. So this is an exciting day. Thank you, Bettina, and I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, next we'll hear from Deputy Administrator Morhard.
Oh, I just echo what Jim and Bob have said. You know, this is a historic milestone. And the reality is that we, in the past, NASA developed, designed, and built, and then operated spacecraft and rockets. This is the first time that a commercial company is building and going to operate this spacecraft and capsule. And we're really looking to be a customer to SpaceX and to other companies in the future. And that's what we're trying to do, is to create and expand, really expand the economy in low Earth orbit. That's really what this is about tomorrow.
Thank you. And our commercial crew astronauts, we'll start with Nicole.
Thank you so much. It is incredibly exciting to be here. You know, people always ask, what's it like to be in the astronaut office and train with folks that are flying on so many different spacecraft? We have Soyuz, SpaceX, Starliner, and then we're already starting to lay the foundation for Orion. So it's just an incredible time to be training with all these different opportunities in front of us, and we are so proud and happy for Doug and Bob. You know, it feels kind of like one of your close family members having a great lifetime achievement, and really that's what it is. So on a personal level, that's definitely, I think I could speak for the astronaut office, and that's how we all feel so proud for everything that they've accomplished with the NASA and SpaceX team to get ready for this launch. You know, and it's so important because this is not just about one launch, right? I mean, this is Launch America. It's not Launch NASA. It is Launch America, and it's huge. My son is 8 years old, and so he's never seen Americans launch from the United States ever. It's kind of foreign to him. And as I was getting ready to come on this trip today or yesterday, you know, he asked me, "Hey, Mom, are we going to the moon? Is this our first flight to the moon?" And I said, "Well, son, I mean, not technically, but it is the first big step on our roadmap to the moon for the Artemis mission and eventually to Mars." And he, as a young boy, sees that. And so I know there's a lot of kids out there that will be watching the launch tomorrow. And it's just an exciting team for all of NASA, SpaceX, and a proud moment for all of America.
Great. Jill?
Yeah, I echo Nicole's sentiments exactly. What a privilege to be here today, to be a part of this team, commercial and government entities working together, SpaceX and NASA, to pull something off like this. What a privilege to be here just just a day away from launch. We are so incredibly excited to be a part of this. You know, I had the opportunity to launch with our international partners to International Space Station back in 2015, and that's at the core of what we're doing here today, is to continue that incredible legacy of work that we've done on the International Space Station. We have had humans living and working on that orbital outpost for almost 20 years, conducting science and research to extend our presence in the solar system and to improve life back here on Earth. And this launch represents an extension of that capability, and having the ability to launch Americans from American soil on a U.S. spacecraft is absolutely amazing. You know, I think about my launch and the family and guests that the few family and guests that I was able to have out there to watch that. And I think about now, you know, so many Americans in the future being able to congregate down here and watch this incredible vehicle take off. For people that live here in Florida, just to go out on their porches or to look up from our
5,
and to see
4,
this vehicle claw its way
3,
into space,
2,
to watch Americans flying into the
1.
Certainly when you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you.
When the engine's light,
5,
you know you are going, and you know
4,
you're going somewhere pretty fast.
3,
when the engine's shut off, you go from
2,
3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously,
1.
and things start floating. And I remember distinctly just thinking, what just happened?
Same thing happens when you get to space station. It's kind of a defining moment when you get the hatches back open. By sharing this experience with SpaceX and creating another partner that has the same capability, I think we really set the future up to continue to blossom.
This will be the first time humans have ridden on the Falcon 9, even though it's flown many, many times. So just taking in that experience and the sounds and all those things that we can relate to future crews is going to be something important.
Certainly when you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you.
When the engine's light, you know you are going, and you know you're going somewhere pretty fast. When the engine's shut off, you go from 3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously, and things start floating. And I remember distinctly just thinking, what just happened?
Same thing happens when you get to space station. It's kind of a defining moment when you get the hatches back open. By sharing this experience with SpaceX and creating another partner that has the same capability, I think we really set the future up to continue to blossom.
This will be the first time humans have ridden on the Falcon 9, even though it's flown many, many times. And so just taking in that experience and the sounds and all those things that we can relate to future crews is going to be something important to do too.
To the launch, where about 45 seconds out, we'll make a determination, go or no go, and then we will go. Bob, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that it is a SpaceX launch. SpaceX is in the Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center through a partnership we have with them, and it will be a SpaceX
5,
launch record.
4,
Gives the final go
3,
where everybody is full, and
2,
the management team is going to be involved
1.
in the launch process. 5, 4, 3,
The answer to that
2,
question is yes.
1.
Of course, our goal is to have SpaceX be able to do missions one day without NASA. We want them to go get customers that are not us. And so we want to make sure that they're making decisions, but if we see something that we disagree with, certainly we have the right to intervene. I don't see that being necessary, but at this point, But yes, we can intervene if necessary.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Paul Brickman from UPI.
Yes, hello. I would like one of you to comment on the sort of built-in uncertainty of this mission in terms of the length of the mission, anywhere from 6 to 16 weeks, I believe. I know any manned spaceflight or crewed spaceflight has uncertainty, but I'm wondering how much of the readiness reviews went over the astronauts' training and the uncertainty of that time period.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into this. Number one, we got to get our astronauts to the International Space Station. Once they're there, there's a lot of different elements that come into play as to when they come home. Remember, this is a test flight. The highest priority is to test the vehicle and get it home safely, and then be prepared to launch Crew 1. So some of the things that go into the mix as to when they're going to come home include the solar arrays, for example. There is a limitation on the solar arrays of about 114 days, period. We can't go beyond that. Of course, some engineers might argue that we can, as we're on the space station, we will understand how the solar arrays are performing. But right now, we're looking at a limitation of 114 days for the solar arrays. Then we have to consider weather. When we come back to Earth, we have to make sure that the winds and the sea states and the precipitation and lightning, all of those things create a metric, if you will, as to how safe it is to come home. And so we need to make sure that we have the right weather. And if we have a good window to come home, remember, this is a test flight. And as such, if we have a good window to come home and they're not necessary on the International Space Station, we will be taking it. And then, when we think about the other big parameter is, when is Crew 1 going to be ready? Right now we're targeting August 30th for a launch of Crew 1. That's what we're working toward. What that means is that we can keep our astronauts on board the International Space Station doing the maintenance of the ISS, as well as doing experiments on the ISS for a period of time, knowing that they can be there probably until early August. We need to get the spacecraft home. Then we need to evaluate the spacecraft, collect all the data, make sure that it performed the way we wanted it to perform, and then get ready to launch Crew 1. So the big parameters, of course, are the weather, the solar arrays, when Crew 1 is going to be ready. So there is a lot of flexibility built into the back end of this mission, but that's intentional. I want to reiterate, it is a test flight. The goal is to get them to the International Space Station, test the systems, and get them home. If they can do more work than that while they're on the ISS, certainly that's okay. But this is a test flight.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Keith Cowing.
Yeah, hi. I have a question as a member of the Apollo generation. I know Jim Morhart will remember that when we were kids, we wanted to know everything that astronauts did, and NASA went out of their way to tell us everything, including what they ate. Yesterday, Marina asked a pretty straightforward, honest question. What are they going to have for breakfast? And the answer was, I don't know, but we'll get back to you. And then Joey Roulette did some checking and found out that the astronaut breakfast menus are not subject to disclosure. Is that really the answer? I mean, how do you explain to a sixth grader in the Artemis generation that we can't tell you what the astronaut's eating? I mean, shouldn't there be a little more transparency in some of this?
Can I take that one, Bettina? Well, I don't think, as far as transparency goes, I can tell you what it's like in the past. And astronauts get anything they want for breakfast. You got your choice, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It's made to order. And I can go from my personal experience on my first flight. I'd heard that some folks get space sick, and I certainly didn't want to get sick. I don't get air sick. And so I had like a toasted English muffin and a cup of coffee because I'm addicted to caffeine. I was going easy. But one of my crewmates had steak and eggs and hash browns, and he's pouring the hot sauce on, and he didn't get sick. But no, it's... they may not have even decided what they want for breakfast yet tomorrow. So it's kind of hard to release what you don't know. But I'm sure they'll make a decision and they'll get anything they want.
Thank you.
Maybe some of the current astronauts would like to answer. I know, Shell, you've done a mission. What
That's
did you
right.
eat?
I did. So we got anything we wanted as long as it's what was being served that morning. I was kind of like you, Director Cabana, that I wanted to take a little easy. I didn't know exactly how I was going to react to being on orbit. And so I went easy on the solids. I also got my fair share of coffee. We ate really well while we were in quarantine, but we didn't have the choice of what we were going to eat. And I honestly, I was so excited that day. I can't remember what it is that we ate, but it was plenty, and it was great for what we needed to do that day.
And of course, that was at Baikonur.
That's right. Yeah, that was at Baikonur. Yep, absolutely.
Great. All right, we'll go to our next question. It's Jackie Goddard with the Times of London.
Hello, yes, thank you. My question is for Mr. Bridenstine. Both astronauts are dads, and I wondered what you would say or what you have said that you can share to their two little boys about what their dads are doing and the significance of it. Thank you.
So I had a hard time hearing it. It was a question about the children of the astronauts?
So both astronauts are fathers, so I wondered what you would say,
5,
what you have said that you can share
4,
to their two little boys
3,
about what their dads are doing and the
2,
significance of it.
Absolutely. So I would
1.
start by saying, and they know this, their dads are heroes, American heroes. They're laying the foundation for a new era in human spaceflight. It's an era in human spaceflight where more space is going to be available to more people than ever before. We envision a future where low Earth orbit is entirely commercialized, where NASA is one customer of many customers, where we have numerous providers that are competing on cost and innovation and safety, that they're driving down costs, they're increasing access. And we are proving out a business model, a public-private partnership business model that ultimately will enable us to go to the moon, this time sustainably. In other words, we're going to go to the moon to stay. We love Apollo. The Apollo era was fantastic. The problem is that it ended. And now we've got the Artemis program, which is our sustainable return to the moon, named after Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo in Greek mythology, and she was the goddess of the moon. And this time, when we go to the moon, we get to go with all of America, a very diverse, highly qualified astronaut corps that includes women. And what Bob and Doug are doing is they are the final step in proving the success of a public-private partnership business model that drives down costs and is going to enable us to go not just to the moon, but to go sustainably with reusable landers to the surface of the moon. And all of this ultimately is for a purpose, and that is to get to Mars. So when those little boys are, 40 years old, and we have a permanent presence on the moon, and we have astronauts on Mars, they're going to know that their dads played a critical role in enabling not just this country, but the world as we lead international partners
5,
to humanity
4,
into the solar system than ever
3,
before. Beyond
2,
that, I would remind the children
1.
that their dads we had an opportunity to reflect on the people who've served this country, and of course these two gentlemen have done that as well. So they're heroes in so many different ways. But as I said, when they arrived here at Kennedy, I'm 44 years old. I'm about to turn 45. And when I grow up, I want to be like Bob and Doug.
Okay. Our next question comes from Joey Roulette from Reuters.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Question for
5,
Mr. Bridenstine. It's definitely been a long
5,
time to get to this
4,
point. I'm wondering how,
3,
this, commercial pre-development
2,
to get this point
1.
shape your view of Thanks.
So this is an important milestone. We have been very successful with commercial resupply of the International Space Station. Now we've got commercial crew tomorrow, knock on wood. That will be a successful mission. And then we need to build commercial space stations in low Earth orbit. And in public-private partnerships, we need to prove that they're in low Earth orbit. And that's what we're using the International Space Station for right now. And of course, some of the most salient projects happening there that have been going on really for a long time now would include immunizations being developed on the International Space Station for salmonella, pneumonia, the ability to compound pharmaceuticals that we can't do in the gravity well of Earth. Microgravity is a resource that is very valuable. It is a tool. The ability to print human organs in 3D. We're proving that we can create human tissue using adult stem cells, adult skin cells, creating the stem cells that can create human organs in 3D. Now, we're not at the human organ level, but we're at the tissue level right now. That's a capability that will transform lives here on Earth. The ability to create artificial retinas for the human eye so people who have macular degeneration don't have to lose their eyesight. The ability to create fiber optics in a more pristine way so we don't have to have cable repeaters. So, and that drives down costs and it increases fiber optic networks for humanity across the globe. So all of these things are market drivers that enable a future human spaceflight capability that would be capitalized by the private sector. NASA will be a customer. We will always, always, always be a customer. We've got a lot of science and exploration that we need to do. But those are the kind of activities that we need to see for the future that we believe exists. Right now, space is about a $400 billion market. And we believe that with human spaceflight, that, of course, that's communications, remote sensing, those kind of capabilities. But with human spaceflight, it opens up kind of a much broader marketplace. And we think it's rapidly getting to be, not just a $400 billion, but a $1 trillion market. So I'm a big believer in the commercialization of space. We need it to be successful. It's how we're going to get to the moon and onto Mars. If we keep developing, using American taxpayer dollars to develop capabilities in low Earth orbit, we'll never get to the moon and onto Mars. That's what this program is all about. It's about commercialization, where we are ready to commercialize, and then using NASA money to do the things that commercial industry is not yet ready for, with a purpose, and that is to eventually commercialize those capabilities as well.
Jim, if I could add to that, why are we here? We're here to expand the human condition for all mankind. And that's exactly what Jim's talking about. Right now, we've got one astronaut on the space station. And when we get the full complement back of astronauts, we're going to increase our research up there by 300%. And that's about helping others. That's why we exist. And that's what we're going to do. On the other side of it, commercial launch. Years ago, we had, after shuttle, there was no market share. That's right. We now have 70% of the market share. And that's going to expand starting tomorrow. So that's what this is about.
That's right.
Have anything to add? We'll just go to our next question.
Covered it.
Okay, I'll go to our next question, and that way we can get as many as possible. Marcia Smith from Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. This is for Jim Bridenstine. Could you expand a little bit more on the discussions with the Russians about flying on the commercial cruise ships? Dmitry Rogozin had a bunch of comments yesterday, and he talked about being enthusiastic about having an alternative to Soyuz, but then he said he was confused about NASA's plans for Gateway. Could you just fill us in on where the negotiations stand about us flying on Soyuz and Russians flying on commercial crew? And is that at all tied in with the discussions on Gateway, or are they on parallel paths? Or are you trying to get a whole big package of future U.S.-Russian space cooperation? Could you just expand on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the commercial crew program, remember, the goal here is to have the International Space Station. Half of it is Russian, the other half is American. And of course, on the American segment, we've got a lot of international partners. And when we think about the International Space Station, if we are going to maintain a complement of both Russian and American astronauts on board, then we need to be willing to launch Russian cosmonauts on commercial crew, and they need to be willing to launch American astronauts on the Soyuz. And my last conversations with Dmitry Rogozin, I think we were both in strong agreement that necessary for both nations as we move forward. So that's kind of the low Earth orbit, International Space Station, commercial crew, and the Soyuz program. I think we're in agreement in how we need to go forward there. Now, it is true that when we talk about the gateway, that's a separate kind of level of discussion for what the future looks like. And yes, we have made proposals to Russia as far as we've asked them, how would they like to participate in the gateway? We've offered suggestions, and right now we're in a holding pattern, waiting to hear back. But the partnership has been strong. This partnership goes back to 1975, the year of my birth. With the Apollo Soyuz program, and then of course the Shuttle Mir program, and now of course the International Space Station program. This has been, I think, a bright, shiny object that demonstrates that space can unite people, and it's really above terrestrial geopolitics, literally above terrestrial geopolitics. So I think it's a relationship that we are interested in maintaining, and of course we'll continue to work with them. Bob, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think, it's something that we need to work on as we continue down the road. We do have a strong partnership, and it's necessary to have multiple vehicles to get us to the International Space Station. We need that dissimilar redundancy, not just between Boeing and SpaceX, but with our Russian partners as well. We proved it during the shuttle era, and I'm sure in the future we'll prove it again.
Our next question comes from Robert Perlman from Collect Space.
Behind you, the worm has made a return on this flight and has become more and more prevalent. I wonder if you could talk about how that came to be. Was it SpaceX's request? Was it your idea? And what will be the role of the logo type going forward beyond this mission?
I missed it.
I think you missed the beginning of your question. I think it's about the NASA worm, but can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, if you can hear me now. It is indeed about the worm, the NASA logo type. How did it come to be that it was resurrected for this mission? Was it SpaceX's idea? Was it your idea? Or how did that come to be? And what is its role with the agency going forward beyond this mission?
That's a good question. I'd love to say it was my idea. I will tell you, as the NASA administrator, I've heard from a lot of people that you ought to bring back the worm. I've heard it over and over again. Look, again, I'm the first NASA administrator in history that wasn't alive when we had people walking on the surface of the moon. Not in 1969 and not in 1972. So my generation grew up with the worm. When I say the worm, for the people out there that might not be familiar, it's the NASA logo that's red, and it's written out. And then the logo that's blue, we call that the meatball. But look, I grew up with the worm as the logo of NASA. It's kind of personal to me, just because that's how I grew up. I will tell you that the meatball, the blue logo, the circle blue logo, that's a logo that's very near and dear to a lot of other people, the people of the Apollo generation, for example. The NASA style guide is very clear. The worm no longer exists, but I write the style guide. So I made a determination that for this particular mission, on this particular day, we were going to bring back the worm. And we did. This launch, and the reason I thought it was important to do it on this launch, because it got so much attention. And I wanted all of America to know that this is a $3.5 billion investment by the American taxpayer. And this is an American launch. And yes, it's commercial crew. But this is NASA. It's a little bit nostalgic for me. I grew up, I'm a Navy pilot by trade. I grew up with my favorite airplane being the X-29. And it's a forward swept wing aircraft that it looks really awesome, if I may say so myself. I had a big poster of it on my wall, and on the side of it was the NASA worm. So I'll be honest, I love the worm. We brought it back. But it's also important to note, on this rocket, we have both. We're bringing people together on this mission. We've got the meatball and we've got the worm. And I like both, so we're going with both.
And when I've noticed the difference with the worm being out there and the meatball. You see a ton of kids these days walking around, right? NASA's T-shirts, the worm on their jacket and everything. I think it's just really helped to energize some of the younger generation folks that haven't seen launches maybe in their entire life, or maybe they were very young when that happened. And so you get a lot more questions when we get the opportunity to go out to schools to speak with children. And it's different, I think, than maybe when we were growing up. At least when I remember growing up thinking, oh, an astronaut, that's some far-fetched idea. Somebody does that. I don't know who they are, though, or something you see in the movies, but that's not going to be our future. Our future with the commercialization of space is that it's going to be very accessible to many young people, whether it be as an astronaut or a scientist or as an artist or as an engineer that's working on this program. And so I think the younger generation are starting to realize that and understand it's not the movies, it's not sci-fi, it's reality.
Jim, I got to tell you, I'm kind of glad the worm is making a comeback. In the 70s, it was that futuristic look. It was, it was the future. And my first NASA flight jacket, I still got it at home, and I got a worm on my shoulder and a meatball on the front. So okay. I think they're both awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
So when Doug and Bob launch tomorrow, and you watch that rocket ascend, look for the worm.
It'll be there.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Going to our next question as we try to get in as many people possible. We're trying to wrap it up. Lauren Grush.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. So about the toilet, no, I'm kidding. I was actually curious if you guys could walk us through what the scrub scenario looks like after the astronauts get on board. When do they get off? What do you have to do to make sure that they're safe? And then where do they go? What does that reset look like?
I'm having a hard time hearing that. What was that?
Were you saying scrub, Lauren? I'm just trying to make sure we understand your question.
Yeah, so if you scrub and the astronauts are already on board, what does that procedure look like? How do they come off? What do you have to do to make sure that they're safe?
Of course, it really depends on at what point the scrub occurs, but they'll have the crew access arm will come back to the vehicle, and essentially we're going to make sure that that the vehicle is safe to approach. We'll have the folks from SpaceX will come in, unbuckle Bob and Doug, and then just escort them out down to the ground, and they'll prepare to give the next launch opportunity a shot. But it's all, of course, done in a manner that makes sure that everybody that's involved is safe.
Great. Our next question is Leo Enright from Irish TV.
A very unlikely scenario of a transatlantic abort. As I understand it, there are not one but two abort modes, which would involve splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Ireland. And so I'm wondering, what is the plan there? There don't appear to be assets stationed, say, at Shannon. How are the crew going to be retrieved in this very unlikely scenario? Or will you be waiting for a boat from Fenit in Kerry to come and collect them?
Shell, I'll let you.
You bet, absolutely. So there are a number of abort modes. We can, as the vehicle crosses across the Atlantic, we have various sites that we're kind of aiming for, and we'll either abort forward to some of those sites, Ireland is an example, or do a retro abort to come back to these areas. And we have assets, of course, stationed off of the coast, prepared to assist the astronauts. But as we get into these longer transatlantic abort modes, we'll be partnering with our military assets to deploy divers and folks to get into the water to help the astronauts, and then bring helicopters or boats alongside at whatever assets are available in that particular area. But it's our partnership with the military that really helps us, the Air Force specifically, that helps us deal with any of those more downrange aborts.
Thank you. Next question, Marcia Dunn.
Yes, hi. I'm wondering how many astronauts will be on site for launch tomorrow. I can imagine the entire astronaut corps emptying out of Houston. And how will you prevent launch fever from taking over on such a big mission with such high expectations with the President of the United States in attendance? Thank you.
As far as the number of astronauts that are here, we've taken a lot of precaution to limit the number of people coming in general. I don't know what the total number of astronauts that will be here is. Do you guys know offhand?
It's, I think, under 10.
Under 10?
Definitely under 10. It's a small number, yes.
So we won't have a large contingent of astronauts here. What was the second part of the question?
Launch fever.
Oh, launch fever. Absolutely. Look, this is a serious issue, and as a naval aviator, there's what we call get-home-itis. We have to make sure that we give permission for people to say no, and I've been doing that all along. In fact, we've been so diligent about making sure people have the authority to say no. We went ahead and purchased a seat on a Soyuz rocket for October. And we did that intentionally because we want people to feel free to say no and not feel any pressure to go on this launch. I texted Bob and Doug yesterday, and I said to them very clearly, if you want me to stop this thing for any reason, say so. I will stop it in a heartbeat if you want me to. They both came back and they said, we're go for launch. So they're ready to go. But look, part of my job as the NASA administrator is to make sure people understand that their safety is our highest priority and give everybody in the loop permission to say no before we launch. Did Bob or the astronauts, you guys?
Marcia, just to your point, we do have a small number of astronauts out here, obviously just for the COVID concerns, but we're also able to virtually kind of deploy folks in different areas. So I know there's a lot of the astronaut corps is prepared to support media outlets, social media, things that are online, whether it be live or just virtual. And so I think there's hopefully that there'll be a lot of opportunity for us to reach out to maybe a larger audience than we normally would. Of course, we're not going to have the crowds here at KSC, but it is important that folks know that they can still experience the launch live with all of us just through the communications assets that we have available.
And I'll just throw out, I know the launch team, I know the commercial crew program, I know the folks that are on console, and this is a test flight. And they are going to make sure that it's right before they launch, and they're not concerned about who's here to see it. They're concerned about doing their job and doing it correctly, and they've practiced this, and they'll do the right thing.
Thank you. Our last question will come from Ken Chang from the New York Times.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my question. This is for Mr. Bridenstine. A few days ago, you tweeted noting President Trump's leadership for getting to this moment. And Gary Reisman, a former NASA astronaut, pointed out that commercial crew started in 2010 when under President Obama, and of course commercial cargo goes back to George W. Bush. I was wondering if you could just talk about credit for getting to this milestone for your predecessors and for previous presidents.
Absolutely. So this is a program that demonstrates the success when you have continuity of purpose going from one administration to the next. If we go back all the way to commercial crew, that started under President George W. Bush, commercial resupply, and then commercial crew under President Obama. And Charlie Bolden did absolutely magnificent work as the NASA administrator at a time when this particular program, and Bob, you remember this, it didn't have a lot of support in Congress. And Charlie Bolden, who is a NASA astronaut and an American hero, he's an F-18 pilot. I got to put the F-18 pilot plug in there. But Charlie Bolden did just yeoman's work in order to get this program off the ground, to get it going. And here we are all these years later having this success. I will reiterate that the human spaceflight program under President Trump has really blossomed. Our budgets now are as high as they've ever been in nominal dollars. They're the highest ever. In real dollars, they're still very high, not maybe as high as Apollo, but that was a little bit of an anomaly in the history of NASA's budget. But it's also true that it's being backed up. The rhetoric isn't just there; it's being backed up with the budgets, and it's bipartisan. You know, I did an event with Speaker Pelosi out at the Ames Research Center. Goodness, that would have been last August, and it was Women's Equality Day, and I thought it was important. And we reached out to her and asked her if we could do Women's Equality Day. She was going to do it in San Francisco. We asked her to do it at Ames. And in a press conference after the event, we talked about Artemis, the importance of going to the moon with all of America, now going with women, and we did it on Women's Equality Day. And in the press conference afterwards, she said, you know, we're all counting on you to get not just the next man, but the first woman to the moon. And she said, I'm so glad that you called the program Artemis. Look, this space program that we have in this country unites people, period. It always has. We look at the most divisive times in American history. We think about the Vietnam War, the 1960s, not just the war, but the protests. We think about the civil rights abuses and the civil rights protests, the very divisive, challenging times. And here we are all these years later in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and we have this moment in time where we can unite people again. And that's really what this launch is going to do. It's not just going to unite, you know, Republicans and Democrats. It's going to unite the world. The whole world is going to be watching this particular launch, and all of our international partners are very interested. In fact, they participated in the flight readiness review because their astronauts are one day going to fly on this rocket, and they're already you know, big operators of the International Space Station where this Crew Dragon will dock. So this mission is I think a very uniting mission. Space exploration in general unites Republicans and Democrats. It unites people across geopolitical boundaries. And that's really what's unique about NASA and what's unique about space. But I will not hesitate to tell you that President Trump has been a massive space advocate. He promised to launch American astronauts on American rockets. He promised to create a moon program, and he's done both of those, and he's backed it up with his budget requests, not just with the words.
Okay. Well, with that, we're going to close today's press conference. Thank you so much for joining us. For more information, go to nasa.gov. And for more information of how to enjoy all these events virtually, go to nasa.gov/beourguest. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you could just pinch that and pull it down, like grab it by the last joint and pinch it and pull it down. Yep, that's good.
That feel better? Fat fingers, dude.
Well, you don't want any folds in these things, so I got it one size too small.
I understand that. Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're gonna hold like this? Yeah. I'm gonna show you this one and let you do the second one. So I'm gonna hold like this. He's gonna push against me until he gets all the way in. Once he sees his hand, he'll bend his arm perfect, just like that, and you'll bring them together, okay?
And it just clicks and
That's
clicks.
it. And you pull the dollar back over top.
Yeah.
And then you get to the table, just tuck it under his up here under the team. Ready?
A little more.
you ever feel like you need more? I'll take care of it. I'm gonna double check it. Thank you. All right. Give me a good one. Hold on. All right, good. We'd have all done it. Oh, yeah, you almost said it.
All right, here's the moneymaker. Hey, watch that safer. You wanna? I got this one. Hold it. I'm gonna pull it. Grab that. Coming down. Hey, Lauren. Yeah. Y'all don't need any of that foam. I got something down there for you. All right. It's kind of significant. It's not insignificant, I should say.
I'm gonna let this float.
I'll hand it back to you. Do you see anything on the screen right now, actually?
Nope.
No? Okay, give me 1 second. Let me just bring this back up.
Okay. So.
We're gonna have you look straight forward. We're just gonna calibrate you.
Okay.
Hold.
Trying to throw them off station.
Oh yeah, no, so our.
All right, looks
Let's see. Houston, I've come off structure underneath the airlock here. Don't appear to have a safety tether. I'm going to swing my PGT out of the way and deploy my hand controller.
And we copy EV1. You're coming, did you say nadir off the airlock?
Nadir off the airlock, yeah.
Copy. In 5 seconds. 5, 4, 2, 1. And you can power up.
Okay. I've turned on the safer.
We copy power up on the safer.
Waiting for it to stabilize. The attitude still definitely looks very jumpy to me.
And what are you seeing right now?
I'm seeing the underside of space station.
Copy.
Okay. And I'm going to start putting some inputs in to come back towards station. I think I'm closing the gap.
ZV2, I'm making my way towards node 2. Looks like you're going to come in between.
I'm aiming for what looks like there's an antenna and a line of handrails
1
on the side of the lab here.
Copy. We see you passing the arm, looking at the station cameras, coming in at a good speed.
Copy.
And we'll count that.
Okay, well, I'll get to another handrail over here.
Yeah. There we go. There's not a dedicated Z-book.
Okay.
Essentially, that would be part of the task list activity. We'll tell you, hey, go to this Z-book, unplug this equipment.
Okay.
That way you can plug in.
And we're still missing one more called P2. Okay, like that.
Yeah, like the side is always more intuitive for me. And that just the same way we calibrate when you're doing training down here, that's how we do it there. So wherever you're pointing forward, that's going to be your new forward.
Okay.
So if you move your head down and double tap, that becomes your new forward.
Okay.
Okay. So this is where you can look down and see your display.
Okay, I can see my display 74%, 73%, so it's using up some of the propellant. I'm going to pitch a little bit to get pointed in the right direction here. Okay. It's interesting. I can see the line in the training.
And EV2, are you ready for cooling or not yet?
EV2, I'll take 5 pH of cooling.
Copy. ECS, go to 5 GPH on the blue.
TDECS, 5 GPH and work on the blue. Alarms had been enabled and we show no alarms at impact testing.
Copy. And good morning, Safe Tires EV1 and 2. How do you copy? Copy Safe Tires EV1, copy Safe Tires EV2, going to backup.
Copy. Yes, you're going to need a Bravo 7.
Okay.
Install torque was 23, so.
Okay. I've got the PGT, and I'll set Bravo 7, and then was it counter 2?
Counter 2.
Okay.
And Bob, I copy your question about closing the MLI on the other one.
Correct.
I think we can probably defer that, and once we've pulled out the spare, it'll be easier from the front side. You can just grab it then.
Okay. And is my next to go to the crew lock bag to relocate it to the forward?
Yep.
And Bob, copy your tethers are good now?
Yes.
Gotcha. And you're good for me to take GCA here?
I am. Can release my feet.
AV1's in the APFR, stowing the ingress aid. My tethers are in a good config, my PGT's in good config.
Okay. Okay, for M1 from EV1, ready, begin GCA, and I'd like
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
certainly when you go through the launch
1.
Certainly when you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you.
When the engine's light, you know you are going, and you know you're going somewhere pretty fast. When the engine shut off, you go from 3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously, and things start floating. And I remember distinctly just thinking, what just happened?
Same thing happens when you get to space station. It's kind of a defining moment when you get the hatches back open. By sharing this experience with SpaceX and creating another partner that has the same capability, I think we really
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Five, 4, 3,
Today, with our partners at SpaceX, we mark a new first in NASA's storied history and usher in the commercial crew era of American spaceflight.
At 4:33 Eastern Time this afternoon, two of NASA's finest, astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, will lift off from Pad 39A aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft atop a Falcon 9 rocket. This will mark SpaceX's first flight with crew and the beginning of a new chapter in human spaceflight.
Good afternoon and welcome to Kennedy Space Center. I'm Marie Lewis of NASA.
And I'm Lauren Lyons, an engineer at SpaceX. And today we have special guest, retired astronaut Leland Melvin, who is here to provide a truly unique perspective on today's events.
Marie and Lauren, thanks for having me here. And I am like so excited. I've got rocket fuel going through my veins. And you guys, I was out there 11 years ago. Pad 39A on STS-129, and this is really hallowed ground that we have here. And you think about the storied legacy of Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Shuttle, and now this new era, SpaceX Crew Dragon. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, and we're so excited to have you here to go through it with us. We want to talk first, though, about the weather, because that's the big story of the day right now, the headline. And teams from NASA and SpaceX are keeping an eye on the weather here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Meteorologists from the U.S. Air Force 45th Weather Squadron are predicting a 50-50 probability for launch, so keeping things exciting. A rain shower passed through the area just a moment before the start of our coverage, which delayed us by just a few minutes, and which is why we are indoors now. That weather is expected to pass, but teams will continue to monitor our flight rules, including flight through precipitation, as well as anvil and cumulus clouds around the launch pad. Teams look at more than just the weather around Kennedy, but also weather and sea states in the flight path of Crew Dragon. That's really important. All of those need to be favorable before launch. Now, Tropical Storm Bertha has been causing some weather that teams will continue to monitor to make sure it's okay for rescue operations, just in case that's needed. And the team will convene shortly to review the latest weather and wind trends around the flight path of the rocket and make a decision about proceeding. Now, if all is go, we will be tracking a 4:33 p.m. Eastern launch for the return of human spaceflight to the International Space Station from U.S. soil. And the team also will take another look at weather prior to propellant loading, which is scheduled to happen about 45 minutes prior to launch if we do in fact proceed. And we have teams all over the country covering the action, from SpaceX headquarters in California, Mission Control in Houston, our social media desk in Washington, and of course, right here in Florida.
Today's mission marks Crew Dragon's second test flight and its first test with humans on board. We're about, 4 hours and 9 minutes away from liftoff, and Bob and Doug finished their lunch just recently, and now they're going through their final medical checks before NASA turns them over to the SpaceX team. Once the crew is handed over, there are a series of key milestones that the teams will need to complete as we count down to T0. The first one is suit up. The suit up room is located in NASA's Operations and Checkout Building, or the ONC building, as we'll sometimes refer to it today. This is where the SpaceX team will help astronauts put on their suits in preparation for their journey to the launch pad. From there, next up is what we call crew walkout. Once their suits up, once suit up is complete, the astronauts will leave the ONC for final goodbyes with friends and family that are gathered outside of the facility before they head out to Pad 39A.
And following final goodbyes, the crew will get in their Tesla and begin the roughly 20-minute drive to Pad 39A. Now, once at the pad, the crew will ascend the fixed service structure in order to board the spacecraft in a process we call ingress. During ingress, the SpaceX team will run a series of checks to ensure the suits, seats, and vehicle interactions all are functioning properly.
And after all vehicle and crew checkouts are completed, the SpaceX closeout team will close Dragon's hatch with Bob and Doug safely inside. About 40 minutes before launch, the crew access arm, which is the long walkway that the astronauts use to board Dragon, it'll retract away, followed shortly thereafter by arming of the launch escape system.
Once the arm is retracted and the escape system armed, propellant loading on Falcon 9 will begin. About 5 minutes before liftoff, Dragon will be configured for what we call terminal count. This is where Dragon's onboard computers take control of the vehicle.
And at T0, just under 4 hours from now, we expect to see Crew Dragon atop Falcon 9 lift off from Pad 39A, carrying astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Roughly 12 minutes after liftoff, Dragon will separate from the Falcon 9 second stage, with Dragon officially taking over full responsibility for the remainder of the journey to the space station. And as I mentioned previously, Bob and Doug are just finishing up their launch, and we are currently awaiting their arrival to the suit-up room.
And while we await that moment, you will notice over the course of this broadcast, we do not have crowds gathered here at Kennedy Space Center, and that, of course, is one of the protocols we've taken to protect each other and our teams. We would normally have tens of thousands of guests here at Kennedy Space Center to view the launch, but even though we couldn't host a lot of people here, you can still join us every historic mission. This is where Dragon's onboard computers, and we have a team dedicated to those of you following along on social media. That's NASA's Tahira Allen, and she is in Washington right now leading that effort. Tahira?
Falcon 9 lift off from Pad 39A, carrying astronauts Bob Behnken and
hey
Doug
everyone,
Hurley.
I'm Tahira Allen,
Roughly
here
12
to bring
minutes
you all
after
the excitement
liftoff,
happening
Dragon will
across the
separate
nation
from the Falcon
today.
9 second
This is a
stage,
big day
with
for
Dragon
both NASA
officially
and
taking
SpaceX,
over
and
full
we want to share it with
responsibility
you.
for the remainder
You
of the
can
journey
join
to
the
the space
conversation
station.
online
And as
by
I
using
mentioned
the
previously,
hashtag
Bob and Doug are just finishing
on
up their
NASA's
launch,
Facebook,
and we are
Twitter,
currently
LinkedIn,
awaiting their
and
arrival to the
Instagram.
suit-up room.
We'll be
And
monitoring
while we
that
await
hashtag,
that moment,
Launch
you will
America.
notice over the course
Don't
of this
forget,
broadcast, we
all
do not
day
have
to share some
crowds
of your
gathered
questions,
here at Kennedy
comments,
Space
and
Center, and that,
photos
of course, is
live
one of
on
the
air.
protocols we've
There
taken
will
to
also
protect
be
each other and
multiple
our teams.
opportunities for
We
you
would
to
normally
engage in a
have
few
tens of
social
thousands of
media
guests here
polls
at
during
Kennedy
today's
Space
live
Center to
broadcast.
view the launch.
So head
But
on
even though
over
we
to
couldn't
NASA's
host
Twitter
a
to
lot of
cast
people
your
here,
votes.
you can still join
While
us
you're
every
counting down
historic
to
mission
liftoff,
from right where
be
you
sure
are.
to check
And
out
we have
our
a team
custom
dedicated
Launch
to those of
America
you following
Facebook
along
and
on social
Instagram
media.
augmented
That's
reality
NASA's
filters.
Tahira Allen,
I
and she's in
promise you will
Washington
not be
right now leading that
disappointed.
effort.
They transport
Tahira?
you right to our launch viewing site at Kennedy Space Center, where you can literally see the Falcon 9 rocket lift off in a pair of sunglasses. If you're looking for some behind-the-scenes action, I highly recommend check out NASA's Facebook page to join the first ever global NASA social. So in this group, you'll find tours of Kennedy Space Center. You'll get this awesome Launch America badge. We even have some social team members in there making custom badges where you can add your face in it, a little personalized touch. And you'll also just find a really great community of others pumped to witness this historic launch. So like I said, head on over to NASA's Facebook page to join this group. So to get everyone started today, we have a question for you out on Twitter. We'd like to know which of you watched the final space shuttle launch in 2011. So like I said, head on over to NASA's Twitter to cast your vote, because we'll be sharing the results live on air. And with that, let's head back to Lauren at NASA Kennedy. Lauren.
Thanks, Tahira. Wherever you are in the world, we are super excited to have you joining us today and experiencing these historic moments. The purpose of today's demonstration mission is to put Crew Dragon through the final operational paces that are necessary to officially certify the vehicle for human spaceflight. Both the SpaceX and NASA teams have put years of development, testing, and training into this effort, and we are now just hours away from seeing Falcon 9, Crew Dragon, and Bob and Doug lift off from the first time from the same launch pad that first sent humans to the moon more than 50 years ago.
And we're just about 3 miles from Launch Complex 39A, where liftoff will happen in a little over 4 hours. Let's check in with the team at SpaceX Hawthorne, where NASA's Dan Hewitt and SpaceX's Jesse Anderson are keeping an ear on operations. Hi, guys.
Let's head back to Lauren at NASA.
Thanks, Marie, and hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. I'm Dan Hewitt. Really excited to be here today for this historic launch.
Dan, we are so excited to have you here with us. My name is Jesse Anderson, and I'm a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. We are so honored to be NASA's partner in returning humans to space from the shores of Kennedy Space Center. 10 years ago, we sent the Dragon that's displayed right behind us on its first orbital demonstration flight. And I speak for all of us at SpaceX when I say we could not be more excited to finally be sending humans to the International Space Station.
Great day.
And we're just
Today's
about
mission
3
is
miles
known
from
as
Launch
Demonstration
Complex
Mission
39A,
2
where
or
liftoff will happen in a
Demo-2.
little
It's
over
going to be the
4
first
hours.
time a
Let's check
commercially
in
built
with the team at
spacecraft will
SpaceX
launch
Hawthorne,
people
where
to the
NASA's
space
Dan
station.
Hewitt and SpaceX's
Demo-2 is
Jesse
an end-to-end
Anderson
flight
are
test
keeping
from
an ear
launch
on
all the way to
operations. Hi,
docking
guys.
and ending with splashdown. And it's the final Marie, test for and NASA hello to from certify SpaceX SpaceX for headquarters regular in crew Hawthorne, flights to California. the space station. Right now, SpaceX and NASA have teams working together around the country. On the SpaceX side, team at the Cape are performing final launch day checkouts, and they're just going to make sure Dragon is healthy and good to go.
At the moment of liftoff, we will transfer authority over Dragon from our firing room in Florida to Mission Control here in Hawthorne. Mission Control will have insight and command of Dragon systems for the entirety of this upcoming mission. Since Dragon is a highly autonomous vehicle, our teams in Mission Control will be continuously monitoring the health and performance of the spacecraft through the entire duration of its journey, from liftoff all the way until Dragon splashes back down on Earth.
And while there are a number of people on headset in Mission Control right behind us, the mission director is the one in charge. It's also where the SpaceX Core, which stands for Crew Operations Responsible Engineer, essentially the voice talking to the astronauts, is going to reside.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. SpaceX has successfully completed 22 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, and that includes 21 trips to the International Space Station. To get us where we are today, not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, but we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
And one of those most important safety features on Crew Dragon is the launch escape system. It's a huge advancement in the safety of human spaceflight. We're able to demonstrate this system in two important tests, first back in May 2015 with the pad abort test, and then again more recently just last January where SpaceX conducted the in-flight abort test. Dragon's launch escape system is outfitted with 8 Super Draco engines that are integrated directly into the spacecraft body. This enables Dragon to separate from Falcon 9 and carry astronauts to safety in case of an emergency on the launch pad or all the way up to orbit.
In addition to the launch escape system, SpaceX has completed over 80 parachute tests, which include nearly 30 tests of just the upgraded Mark III parachutes flying on today's vehicle. And this is to ensure a safe landing back on Earth, even in the unlikely event that one of those 4 main parachutes fails.
And let's not forget the significance of our first demonstration mission, which took place just last year. And that was also an end-to-end flight test to and from the International Space Station. Just no humans on board that time. For now, though, let's turn it over to SpaceX's Principal Integration Engineer, John Insprucker, for our first status update. John?
Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. As Dan said, I'm John Insprucker, and I'll be bringing you status updates throughout the countdown. We're currently coming up at T-minus 4 hours and counting to the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon to the space station.
On the launch pad,
listening right now to see if we get a status brief on the countdown net. While we wait for that, point out the major event that got us to this point so far was the static fire of the Falcon 9. That was 5 days ago. We rolled the Falcon 9 with the Dragon capsule to the launch pad, and static fire was performed on the 22nd. We're going to wait a minute, listen to the launch director.
Which took place just last year, and that was also an end-to-end flight test to and from the International Space Station. Just no humans on board.
Still awaiting the final conjunction.
For now, though, let's turn it over to SpaceX's Principal Integration Engineer, John Insprucker, for our first status update. John?
Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. As Dan said, I'm John Insprucker, and I'll be bringing you status updates throughout the countdown. We're currently coming up at T-minus 4 hours
no
and
constraints
counting
performing
the launch
in
of
section
Falcon
of
9
this
with
procedure.
Dragon to the
Reminder,
space
we will
station.
use procedure
Listening right now
52.911
to see if we
contingency
get a
procedure.
status
Any
brief
required
on the countdown net.
contingency
While we
actions.
wait for that,
One final
point
reminder
out
for
the
handover
major
to
event
ENLD
that
that
got
at
us to
T-minus
this
an hour,
point so
we
far
will
was
ask
the
that any
static fire
personnel
of the Falcon
not
9.
intending
That
to
was
be
5
in the
days
room
ago.
during propellant
We
load
rolled the
and
Falcon
launch
9
will
with
need
the
to
Dragon
clear out
capsule to the
subsequent
launch pad.
15
The
minutes. We'll
static
look for
fire
all
was
personnel to
performed
be
on the 22nd.
in their seats settled and remaining in
We're
their
going to wait a
position
minute,
through
listen to the launch
ascent.
director.
Dragon separation or T plus 12 minutes and 2 seconds. Now over to CE for Falcon 9.
p.m. Eastern. Still waiting the final
Falcon 9 is in good health. COPVs are at pressure. AFDS checkouts are complete, and we have a clean alarms board. We're proceeding down. No concerns on our end.
Upper level winds currently looks acceptable for flight.
No questions. Back to LD.
We have no constraints performing any section of this procedure. A reminder, we will use procedure 52.911, crew contingency procedures for any required crew contingency action.
Thank you, CE.
One
And
final
MD
reminder
for
for
Dragon.
handover to ENLD that at T-minus an hour.
Good morning,
we ask
LD.
that any
Dragon
personnel
is healthy.
not
We're not
intending to
tracking
be
any
in the room
issues
during
here for the countdown.
propellant
Dragon
load
has
and launch
completed
will
its
need to
prop tank
clear out
pressurization
subsequent 15 minutes.
and
We'll look
is
for all
in a good
personnel
configuration for crew ingress. That's the next item that we'll be waiting for, and no issues at this time.
Thank you, MD. Next up over to expect a walkout in about 45 minutes to begin the transport out to pad 39A. Countdown briefing. Thank you.
John Insparker back with you again at the webcast desk. That was SpaceX Launch Director Mike Taylor giving the situational briefing at T-minus 4 hours. Everything sounded well. You can see the Falcon 9 on the pad. As I mentioned, we static fired last week. The vehicle's been on the pad since then. We did the review of static fire. Everything looked good. Now we are getting ready for the crew ingress coming up, as the launch director said, a little bit later this morning. Now, most recently, activity on the Dragon late load cargo was put on a couple of days ago. Now we're ready for the crew to come out to the pad, down the access arm, and load into the capsule. Now, at the same time, we are also watching the weather. You heard the launch director talk about the weather brief we got 15 minutes ago. The tropical storm has begun moving onshore. That's actually improving conditions, both downrange in emergency splashdown locations if needed for Dragon, as well as at the launch site. We do expect, though, the probability of violating conditions is still 60%. The concerns at liftoff are going to be flight through precipitation, the thick cumulus clouds, and the possibility of violating the lightning rule. But right now, everything is still go. So with everything looking good from Hawthorne, we're going to send you down to Houston, where Gary Jordan is with the flight control team at NASA's Johnson Space Center in the Mission Control, Houston. How are the teams looking down there, Gary? Now we're ready for the crew to come out to the pad, down the access arm.
Thanks, John, and welcome everyone to Mission Control Houston. Today, I'm joined remotely by NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn. From this room, we've been supporting humans aboard the International Space Station for nearly 20 years, nonstop, every single day. Crews from all over the globe have visited the orbiting station, but it's been almost 9 years since they started their journey into space from American shores. And while the teams here may appear subdued and focused, there's definitely an excitement around the entire center to be returning launch operations to America.
The thick cumulus crowds, and the possibility
and our
of
astronauts
violating
are thrilled to
the
be taking a new spacecraft
right
into orbit.
now,
This will be the new first for us, flying to space on a commercial vehicle, and the entire astronaut corps will be watching. As with every first flight of the system, there are still things to be learned and proven out, but we believe this crew and this system is ready. You know, many people think of Mission Control when they think of Johnson Space Center, but this center is also home to world-class training facilities and thought leaders in spacecraft development. We have drawn from both of these disciplines and spent the last 3 years alongside the SpaceX team to make sure the Crew Dragon is the best spacecraft possible, and that the astronauts are prepared for every scenario.
And this mission comes at a critical time for the space station, with only 3 crew members currently aboard, among them NASA's Chris Cassidy as the lone American.
Definitely an excitement around the entire center to be returning launch operations to America.
Now I'm told we just had the formal handoff of the crew from the NASA team that has supported Hurley and Bacon in their 2-week quarantine over to the SpaceX team that'll get them suited up.
As with every first flight of a system, there are still things to be learned and proven out, including a new suit for the crew to use during launch and entry. Is ready. The crew quarters at Kennedy Space Center has supported human space flight for 5 decades, and now a new chapter is being written. Thought leaders in spacecraft development. We have drawn from both
and it's exciting to witness it here today. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Let's go back to the Kennedy Space Center to watch Suit Up in action as we continue to count down to launch. Leland.
And this mission comes at a critical time
This is
for the space
amazing.
station.
We're in the suit-up room. I mean, I remember this back in 2009 when I was sitting in Lazy Boys from back in the Apollo era, but they have these really cool new suits and new seats that they're working in here. So
yeah, it's so amazing to see this first live look in the room. There's astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley sitting in those seats, being helped by the suit technicians. This room was first used for the first Apollo mission, Apollo 7, that they suited up in there in 1968. And there they are, giving a thumbs up. That looks like Doug giving a thumbs up there. Of course, Bob was mission specialist on STS-123 and STS-130. Bob's a native of St. Anne, Missouri, so I'm sure folks in his hometown are watching. Lots of hometown pride going on right now. And same for Doug. He was born in Endicott, New York, which happens to be my hometown too. But he considers Apple Lake in his hometown, so I know folks are watching there. And Doug was the pilot on STS-127, STS-135, which was the final shuttle flight. So it's so cool to see them in there. Lauren and Leland, last time this room was used for this purpose that you see here was STS-135 in 2011, and Doug Hurley was one of the astronauts in there doing that. So this is really amazing to see.
This room was first used for the first Apollo
wow,
mission,
so
Apollo
the suits
7,
are actually much more than just garments. They actually connect directly into Dragon seats. As you can see there, those GSC seats or ground support equipment seats are essentially replicas of the seats that are inside of the Dragon spacecraft. And the seats provide communications through an umbilical, but also the ability to pressurize the suit if necessary. So right now what the suit team is doing is they're doing communications checks as well as a pressure check to make sure that the spacesuit can hold pressure in the event of a cabin depressurization emergency. This is the last time that we're going to do this check prior to the crew boarding Dragon, where we'll do it all again.
STS-135 in 2011.
So the way that leak check will work is we will provide or essentially inflate the suit with air and hold that pressure for a few minutes, watch the depressurization rate, and make sure that it stays within bounds.
As you can see there, those GSC
and as we stay looking in the suit-up room, you can see Doug Hurley there in the seat. He is the spacecraft commander for Demo-2, and while he continues with checkouts, we want to give you a closer look at the veteran Marine Corps fighter pilot and spaceflight pioneer.
Pressurize the suit if necessary. So right now what the suit team is doing is they're doing communications checks as well as a pressure check to make sure that the spacesuit can hold pressure in the event of a cabin depressurization emergency. This is the last time that we're going to do this check prior to the crew
I think we're certainly ready.
Where we'll do it all
Joining the SpaceX Demo-2 test.
So the way
He's a Marine Corps colonel and test pilot. He was selected as an astronaut in 2000. He piloted Space Shuttle Endeavour and Atlantis for STS-135, the final Space Shuttle mission. Introducing NASA astronaut Doug Hurley.
And as we stay looking in the suit-up room, we can see Doug Hurley there in the seat. He is the spacecraft commander.
It's a life-changing process in so many ways to fly into space. It's just overwhelming in some respects. Just the sensations, the rumbling, the shaking, the acceleration. When the engines shut off and you go from, in the case of the shuttle, you go from 3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously, and things start floating.
I think
and I remember distinctly just thinking, what just happened?
Joining the SpaceX Demo-2 test. He is a
To see a rocket launch in person is it's a pretty emotional event. I remember the first time I saw a shuttle launch, and it was amazing. And then when I saw a shuttle launch with my wife on it, that is quite the emotional experience. It's a life-changing process. My name is Doug Hurley, and I'm the spacecraft commander for the Demo-2 mission to the International Space Station. In some respects, just the sensations, the rumbling. We are doing the first crewed flight for NASA and for SpaceX. So this is the test flight to prove end-to-end from launch to docking to ISS operations and then entry, descent, and landing. Things start floating. This will be the first time the Dragon had a crew on board. And so there's a myriad of objectives we want to achieve for this mission. SpaceX has been responsible for design and essentially making this vehicle what it is. What the astronauts bring to the table is the crew vehicle interface. What would work on orbit, what might not work on orbit, what would definitely work. To be able to just have the entire integrated team that's going to support us getting to and from space station talking together, working through the challenges that simulators typically throw at you. It was really neat being part of it.
For NASA and for SpaceX.
It's just been an incredible undertaking to see where we've come just in the last 5 years that Bob and I have been a part of this, and to be, shortly flying to the International Space Station with the Crew Dragon. It overwhelms you to think about how many people have, in some way, shape, or form, touched this program and this vehicle to get us to this point. And we are the lucky ones that get to fly it. But we certainly not for 1 second take for granted the amount of effort that so many other people had to put into this to make it successful.
To be able to just have the entire integrated team that's going to support us to get to and from space station
right now,
talking together, working through the challenges that simulators typically throw at you.
So
it was really
it makes me so happy to see that he gets to be part of this mission, the spacecraft commander. I'm just glad to see his hard work and his dream come true for them.
Shortly. It's been a long road in a lot of ways for not only
it overwhelms
us,
you to think about
for all the folks that work in the commercial crew program, as well as SpaceX in our case, just working to get to this point. It's been a huge amount of sacrifice and time away from home, but the fruits of our labor are coming to fruition.
For 1 second take for granted the amount of effort that so many other people had to put into this to make it successful.
We are now getting closer to when we expect to see the crew complete their suit checks and walk out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building.
And before they do, here's an introduction to the Joint Operations Commander for Demo-2 and former Air Force flight test engineer, astronaut Bob Behnken.
The spacecraft commander. I'm just glad to see his hard work and his dream come true for them.
When you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you. One is the kind of the celebratory piece of it, which is that you're walking out of the suit-up room and getting in the vehicle that's going to take you to the launch pad. When you close the hatch, that's really when Doug and I are in the vehicle, and it's our vehicle, and we're really in control of the mission at that point.
Test pilots, their task proved that man could fly into orbit around the Earth.
We are now getting closer to when we expect to see the crew complete their suit check.
There's always a balance of managing risk as you go forward to execute a test point and figuring out a way to collect the data. We hear a sound. Okay, is that sound an expected sound? Or we see a light. Is that light an expected light? What's the source of it? Does it sync up with something else that's going on or not? So trying to dissect all of that in real time in your head is, a lot of things happen like that on launching of a vehicle.
From St. Anne, Missouri, he is an Air Force colonel and flight test engineer. He flew aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour twice, introducing NASA astronaut Bob Behnken.
Doug and I are in the vehicle, and it's our vehicle, and we're really in control of the mission at that point. My career at NASA has kind of spanned a couple of decades at this point. I arrived with the class of 2000. Went through the training program, primarily focused on the space shuttle and the International Space Station, learning those systems. Having launched a couple times on vehicles, the second time was definitely different than the first time. Okay, is that sound? You can feel a little bit guilty of, hey, should I study one more thing? Is there one more piece of information I should get? Am I really prepared or not? So that's definitely different between where I was on my first flight and where I'm at right now.
A lot of things happen like that.
It's been really interesting, I think, for both my wife and I to have gone through the process of seeing each other launch in space. I've seen her take that risk and had it be in front of her, and I've done that to her. There's just something different about watching a rocket launch when there are people on board. You feel a little bit differently about the pit of your stomach, and I can only tell you it's multiplied significantly when it's somebody that you know, and then somebody, of course, that's a family member. It's even multiplied more.
For me personally, as a spouse, watching everything that Bob has put into this over the last 5 years, the dedication that he's shown, the perseverance, is
you can feel a little bit
pretty
guilty
special.
Of, hey, should I
For
study
both
one
of us,
more
though,
thing? Or is there
the
one more
way
piece
our
of
minds
information
work,
I should get?
it won't be until
really
sort of the mission is complete
so
that you have really a chance to savor it and celebrate it. This is a huge accomplishment for an Air Force flight test engineer to be part
really
of the demonstration mission of a brand new vehicle. It's going to be amazing.
Of seeing each other without a partner that has that same appreciation, I think it can be challenging for some folks. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that takes away from family that that my spouse appreciates, and I love her for that. About the pit of your stomach, and I can only tell you it's multiple. Really, my role on the Demo-2 mission is to make sure that we get this vehicle tested and evaluated so that we can move on to more operational missions at the International Space Station. We've got a lot of objectives on board the vehicle that we need to accomplish to really make sure that it's good to go. We'll make sure all those systems are working during the test flight so that the future missions will have them available even if they don't plan to utilize them. Through years of the NASA team helping to share that experience and teaching them the lessons that we've learned by going through this, now there's another capability in the U.S. besides NASA to operate something of this magnitude. That same appreciation. When is the last time humans launched on a new vehicle? Certainly on the American side, it's been several decades that my spouse appreciates, and I love it. Now we're in a time when we've got multiple vehicles under development. It's a great time from a space exploration time frame just to see all that happening, and it's because of this nurturing of the environment, being able to pull in a wider group of people who can contribute towards human spaceflight. It's a super cool time. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing for him because he's seen me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real, and so I'm excited for him to see this launch. I want to thank the entire Commercial Crew Program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station. When is the last time humans launched on a new vehicle? Certainly on the American side, it's been several decades.
And we're back live in the room now with Bob Behnken on the left of your screen, Doug Hurley to the right. This is such a cool site here, Leland. This must bring back a lot of memories for you.
Maria really does. I mean, looking at these new suits and these new seats, it's a little different than what I experienced 11 years ago, but it's all the same. The suit techs, the people around you that have been with you, getting you ready for this mission, it's just an amazing moment, and they're getting excited. You can see, these military guys don't really get that excited. They don't show their excitement like civilians do, but it's a moment of history, and we're getting ready for this momentous occasion.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. We heard that earlier this morning they stepped outside with a cup of coffee in hand. Oh, we've got some visitors in the room now. It looks like SpaceX founder Elon Musk to the right of your screen, and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. And we're back live in the room now with Bob Behnken. You see a partition there to keep them a safe distance from the crew, but they're in there to say hello, wish them well before they depart the suit-up room.
Maria really does. I mean, looking at
that's really cool to see there, and we can't hear what they're saying, but love to be a fly on the wall in there right now.
But it's all the same.
I wonder what Elon is saying.
The suit techs, the people around
just probably telling them how honored he is to be able to give them a ride today.
And they're getting
excited. And I know the NASA administrator who talked about this yesterday. I mean, he's met with the crew before today even and said, I told Bob and Doug, it's not too late to call this off. If you have any second thoughts, and of course they had none. They're super pumped about this, ready to go. And right now it's just, we just need the weather to cooperate.
Some visitors in the room now.
I try to think who could potentially be more excited than the SpaceXers, Bob and Doug.
Jim Bridenstine. It's amazing how we have commercial and government working together to send these two NASA astronauts to space safely. It's just it's a great combination of what we can do when we put our minds to things and be creative and innovative and work together as one community.
I totally agree, Leland. I see Bob and Doug walking around our headquarters in Hawthorne all the time. they're basically family members. They're in the cafeteria. They're getting a drink from the soda machine. Every now and then, there are times when the teams can have breakfast with them, which is really cool. And we call them the dads. They are, and they're incredible human beings. They really are. They're brilliant. They're sharp. They are excellent to work with, but they're just great people.
Could potentially be more excited
I'm
than the
really
SpaceXers.
inspired and honored to have known these two guys, and I can't wait to see them launch in space. And I was with you, Lauren, out at SpaceX when we were doing a little tour, and I think you kind of snuck me back in to where they were training, and I got a chance to see them working and training. But when they came back out, I was having lunch, and everyone around was just like, "Hey, these are our team also."
Yes. You know,
it's really amazing. And Lauren, you said, I mean, you talked about what they're like, and they are just two of the most humble people too. I mean, every time I've seen them do an interview, they're getting asked questions about themselves, right? Because they're the stars of the show. They're the ones getting on the rocket, but they always bring it back to the people who made it possible for them. They're always talking about the NASA team, the SpaceX team working behind the scenes that have sacrificed so much to keep them safe and made sure that they are always vigilant. And I know we've talked about this before too, but you know, if you're not looking for something wrong, you're not doing it right. So the teams, even now, they're always looking for any little thing that could go wrong to make sure that Bob and Doug are safe when they strap in and get going.
Absolutely. Around the office, we don't just say, "Oh, we're launching a rocket, we're launching Dragon." We say, "We're launching Bob and Doug."
It's really amazing. And Lauren,
and
you said,
that
I mean, you talked
human
about what they're
element
like,
of this
they are
is
just
essentially leveling SpaceX up in a major way today.
Every time all the technology, all the hardware means nothing. It's all about the people.
Themselves, right? Because they're the stars of the show.
Absolutely.
They're the ones getting on the rocket.
You know,
but
we see just a handful of folks in the room, and we've acknowledged the distance that Mr. Musk and Mr. Bridenstine are standing from the astronauts, and of course they have masks on. This wouldn't really look that much different, though, even if we were not in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, Leland, you know very well what it's like to live in quarantine, getting ready for a mission, and so this coronavirus situation has just kind of underscored the importance of quarantine and keeping the astronauts protected. But can you speak a little bit about what it's like to live in quarantine, getting ready for a mission?
Yeah, we started quarantine about a week before, before we come down to the Cape to get ready for launch. And I think that everyone around you that comes to the crew dinners, they have to get checked by the doctors. And so we really make this a very serious thing, even without a pandemic going on. But I think once we get down here, like we have these crew parties for our families, and we can't go to the parties. We have to FaceTime into the parties, but that's a very serious thing, and we only see our spouses at the beach house and have a dinner and celebrate this momentous moment. But it's a very serious thing, even without pandemics going on.
Absolutely, and obviously Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are two of the best at what they do, and it's starting to really sink in that the mission is on as you see them in their suits there.
It's getting real. It's getting real.
But can you speak a little bit about?
So I remember the very first time that I saw Bob and Doug in these suits at a crew training event at SpaceX. Not only did they look really awesome, astronauts tend to look pretty cool, but the suits looked like they were from the future. Our team designed the spacesuits to maximize safety and functionality with a little bit of style. And so here's Chris Trigg telling us how the SpaceX spacesuit came to be.
We can't go to the parties.
I think one of the things that was important in the development of the suit was to make it easy to use, something that the crew just has to literally plug in when they sit down, and then the suit kind of takes care of itself from there.
It's a very serious
So the suit is really kind of one part of the bigger Dragon system. It's really part of the vehicle. So we think of it as kind of a suit seat system. So the seat that the crew is in and the suit are in a lot of ways working together. And so it made sense that we were designing the Dragon in-house to also design the suit.
Our spacesuits
so I remember the very first time I saw Bob and Doug in these suits
here in Hawthorne, California, in the same building as the rockets.
Really awesome.
The spacesuit is custom made for each crew
but the suits look like they were
and that is to optimize
our team designed the spacesuits to maximize safety and functionality.
We definitely wanted to innovate, and we wanted it to look inspiring, but first and foremost, we wanted it to be safe and reliable. The spacesuit's primary purpose is to protect the crew in the unlikely event that the cabin were to depressurize. But the suit does a number of additional things. It provides cooling and communication to the crew inside of the suit, provides them hearing protection, and the outer layer of the suit is flame resistant, so it provides flame protection as well. We think of it as when the crew gets in the capsule, they get in their seats and they plug the suit into the umbilical that's attached to the seat. And the umbilical is providing everything that the suit needs. So it provides the avionics or electronics for communications, it's providing the air to cool the suit, and it also provides gas when needed to pressurize the suit. So it's really a single point that lets the suit do all the things that it needs to do. We designed the helmet in-house. The helmet serves a number of different functions. Obviously, it's protecting the crew's head, and it's containing gas like the rest of the suit, but it also houses the microphones as well as the valves that are regulating pressure in the suit. We had to design the gloves so that they would work with the touchscreen, but the gloves also still had to do a number of other things like the rest of the suit. So all of those things had to come together. It'll be obviously really amazing to see Bob and Doug in their flight suits, and I think one of the things that's cool about the suit is it's not just a piece of hardware, it's not just a suit, it's a very personal thing. It's Bob's suit, Doug's suit, and so seeing the two of them in their suits using it in flight will be just a really amazing thing. Avionics or electronics for communications is providing the air to cool the suit, and it also
hey, now that you've had a look at the development of the spacesuit, we thought it'd be pretty cool to show you where our astronauts train to be able to fly on board Dragon.
Yesterday, Dan and I had a chance to spend some time in our crew training facility here in Hawthorne, so let's take a look.
Gas like the rest of the suit, but also
we are up in the crew training area. This is right where Bob and Doug have been training over the last several months, even years, to get ready for this flight. There's a couple of things in the room that we're going to show you real quick. We're going to start off with the cockpit simulator.
So all of those things had to come together.
Now, there are 4 seats inside of Dragon.
Really amazing to see Bob and Doug
the 2 in the middle are where the commander and the pilot seat. So this is the commander seat. This is where Doug Hurley is for this flight. This is the pilot seat. This is where Bob Bankton is. Once they're in their suits, they can plug them into the seats. They get communications, breathing air, pressurized gas for the suits themselves, everything just integrated into Dragon systems. But most importantly, right in front of them, we have this set of 3 displays. And these are the touchscreen displays that give them access to Dragon. This is their window into their spacecraft. They're able to see all of the different systems. They're able to take control of Dragon. They're able to see where they are over the Earth in relation to the space station. They're able to see even when thrusters are firing. And if you keep your eye on this little dot, you've been hearing some background noise. We actually have recorded noises of those thrusters. A couple of things that they're able to hear and see in real time while they're training. There's also some hard-coded buttons for some of the more important things, like the pyrotechnics, if they need to cut the main parachute after they land in the water, and of course the launch escape system. So they spend a lot of time in here just getting familiar with Dragon's control systems. But you need a bigger picture. You need to put it all together. And to do that, we can come over here where you just want something a little more higher fidelity, where you have everything from the seats, the displays, the cargo, all of it, just to really make sure you're training so by the time you get up to space, it feels like you've almost been there before. And that's where we're going to find Jesse. All of the different systems. They're able to take control of Dragon. They're able to see where they are over the Earth or in relation
I was just
to the
training
space
for my
station.
next mission
They're
to
able
space.
to see even
But since you're here, let me show you around. This is our flight simulator, which is basically a one-to-one replica of a Crew Dragon vehicle as far as the functionality and the interior. So the astronauts can get suited up, they can practice entering and exiting the vehicle, they can climb into their seats and actually get strapped in. These seats recline back so that they can access these display panels, which are actually functional. And then they can practice flying the vehicle, manually docking with the space station. They can open and close the hatch, and basically by the time they get to a day like today, they felt like they've already done the mission 100 times before.
Just to really make sure you're
I'm going to get back to training, so let's get back to launch.
Feels like you've almost been there before, and that's where we're going to find Jesse.
We're coming up on T-minus 3.5 hours, and all continues to go well for today's launch. Now at the launch pad, Falcon 9 is powered on. Engine and stage checkouts were performed several hours ago. Everything's looking good on those. Now we're currently monitoring telemetry and pressurizing the gas storage vessels on board both the first and second stages. And as I mentioned, the good news is there's nothing significant to report on the rocket. Now on top of the Falcon 9 in the picture there, behind the crew access arm is the Dragon spacecraft. The spacecraft is ready for the crew who you saw suiting up. They'll be walking out here shortly. We'll bring that to you. Functional checkouts of the spacecraft were performed in preparation for the crew arrival. Most recently, the Dragon propellant system was pressurized to the final flight pressure just about an hour ago. And currently, all spacecraft systems are go. Right now on the pad, you can see some silhouettes in the access arm. The Ingress technician team is up there. They've opened the side hatch, and now getting ready for the crew to arrive a little later this afternoon. Now, the Air Force Range is supporting us today with air and sea space clearance. They've got no issues at this time. We're also releasing weather balloons. The initial balloons have been released. They don't give us a go for a launch, but they start to tell us that things in the upper altitude are acceptable if this trend continues. So while we're going to wait on those results to give us a better idea all the way down to about T-minus 30 minutes, we are anticipating acceptable weather for launch at the upper altitude. And as you heard earlier, at the ground level, things look like they'll be improving through the afternoon as well as downrange. So things are looking good with both Falcon and Dragon. The weather is cooperating as we count down to liftoff. We want to see where you're following today's launch from. So let's jump over to Tahira at our social desk. The team is up there. They've opened the side hatch and now getting ready for the crew to arrive a little later this afternoon.
Thanks, John. And I can tell you, the excitement is really building online. Right now, we're up to 700,000 people viewing this broadcast. And Launch America is the #3 trending on Twitter in the U.S. So let's take a closer look at what's being said. Looks like we have Astro Joan, who is just so excited to be on the Space Coast and watching this launch from her driveway. And with that, so jealous to all of you in Florida right now that have the ability to just step outside and witness Bob and Doug make this historic moment. Let's take a look at another.
Things look like they'll be improving through the
So we have Dave Farrell, and this is the Dave Farrell, the bassist from Linkin Park, which is just sick in general. And it looks like his kids coined the term nerve-sighted for today's mission. And this is perfect. I was actually looking for a word to just describe the jitters and excitement leading up to launch. So Dave, thank you for that. I will be stealing that for today's show. Excitement is really building online. Let's take just a broader look at the conversation online right now with this heat map of the United States. So you'll see that the more purple states show the states with the most mentions of Launch America. And with that, it looks like the Florida Space Coast is just really coming alive for today's launch, followed by California, home of SpaceX, and Texas, where our mission control is. So great to see all these home teams showing up for today's historic mission. I want to toss it back to Florida, though, because I have to reiterate, if you have a chance to go to Florida and watch one of these launches in person, it's great. I watched my first one last year, and that was the uncrewed test flight of today's mission. And even then, uncrewed, I literally cried. I mean, you cannot describe the emotion that comes over to see this in person. So highly recommend, if you get a chance, go on down to Florida. For those of you just tuning in, we are using the hashtag Launch America on NASA's social media channels. So join the conversation with us, and maybe we'll show it during the broadcast. So earlier in the show, we polled users on Twitter to see which of you watched the final shuttle launch in 2011, and the results are in. So, looks like about 40% of you were able to watch the last shuttle launch, but 60% of you weren't. And I have to say, I'm not going to lie, I'm with those 60%. This will be my first time watching humans lift off to space from the U.S., and I'm not kidding when I tell you I'm literally thrilled to do this and share it with you all today. So the next question we have for you, as Bob and Doug finish their final suit checks, we would like to know if you were in the room with them right now, what would you say to them on social media? Use the hashtag Launch America, and we'll show it later on in the show. Now let's head back to Marie at Kennedy. Marie, social media channels. So join the conversation.
All right, thanks to Hira. We're looking live at the back doors of the ONC building. Those are the iconic doors that Bob and Doug are going to be walking out in just a minute. But first, we want to pause to honor today's efforts with our national anthem. And the incomparable Kelly Clarkson treats us now with her virtual rendition From Her Home to Yours.
But 60% of you weren't. And I have to say, I'm not going to lie, I'm with those 60%. This will be my first time watching humans lift off to space from the U.S. And I am not kidding when I tell you I'm literally thrilled to do this and share it with you all today. So the next question we have for you, as Bob and Doug finish their final suit checks, we would like to know if you were in the room with them right now, what would you say to them on social media? Use the hashtag Launch America, and we'll show it later. later on in the show. Now let's head back to Marie at Kennedy. Marie?
All right, thanks to Hero. We're looking live at the back doors of the ONC building. Those are the iconic doors that Bob and Doug are going to be walking out in just a minute. But first, we want to pause to honor today's efforts with our national anthem. And the incomparable Kelly Clarkson treats us now with her virtual rendition From Her Home to Yours.
Mostly can you see that our flag was still there? Oh, say does that star-spangled banner at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the peril and the high, o'er the ramparts we were so gallantly streaming.
And any moment now, we're going to see Bob and Doug walking out. We're looking at the pad right now, but you guys, that just gave me chills listening to that. And we saw them getting into the elevator, so they're making their way down to the first floor where they're going to be walking out of those doors any moment now.
Just so exciting to think, you know, back in 11 years ago when I was going down that elevator and about to walk out those doors, it just brings back these memories of getting human beings to space, working together as a team, and having this entire community around you helping you get off the planet.
Yeah, and Leland, I know you have a really cool memory about somebody special that you saw when you walked out of those doors.
Oh my goodness, Marie, when I walked out of those doors, my chemistry teacher was right there from high school, who inspired me to be a scientist. And she said, "Go Leland." And that's what's going to happen when they come out. These people that, you know, their families are going to be there. I wish other people could be there, but it's just an amazing moment.
Yeah, and the shot you just saw there with people carefully spaced apart, we saw them walk out right before the anthem started. It was Vice President Mike Pence along with Elon Musk and Jim Bridenstine. Of course, they left the building just ahead of the crew, so they are standing, we're looking now at the doors, but they're standing just right of that, across from the Teslas. There's also a designated spot for Doug and Bob's immediate family. There's that shot now, so we're looking at the back of Elon Musk, Jim Bridenstine, and Vice President Mike Pence. Of course, there's a small group of media there also, and so we've kind of blocked this very carefully to maintain social distancing and those that can't have the masks on. But there's the Teslas waiting for them. They got the meatball. There's the worm in the background and the worm on the back of the Teslas. So, Leland, I know we were talking about this earlier. You had some mixed feelings about the worm, right?
The worm, the meatball. You know, when I was at NASA Langley, we changed over to the meatball from the worm.
Shot you just saw there with
Lauren, I know you
carefully
love the
spaced
worm.
Apart.
It's
we saw
worm
them walk
all
out
day.
right
All
before
day,
the
really.
anthem started. It was Vice President Mike Pence
I'm sorry.
along with Elon Musk and Jim
I love that the worm
Bridenstine.
is so
Of course,
retro,
they left the
and it's
building
only
just ahead of
fitting
the
that it would
crew,
be
so
making
they
its
are
way back,
standing,
you know,
we're
bringing
looking now
the
at the doors, but they're
historic,
standing just right
just
of that.
opulence of NASA's past.
There's also a designated spot for
thank
Doug
you.
and
But I mean,
Bob's
the
immediate families.
chevron
There's
and
that
the
shot now, so we're
meatball goes
looking
back
at
to
the back
Langley's
of
tradition when it
Elon
was,
Musk,
you know,
Jim Bridenstine, and Vice
aviation,
President Mike Pence.
and that gets back to that heritage and that history too. So
I guess,
sure.
Okay, truce,
orbits,
or truce.
I feel like this is a microcosm of what's happening about the worm. But the meatball's not going away. It's a worm-meatball partnership.
There we go.
So there's another view there of the crosswalk. There is where Bob and Doug are going to walk out any moment. Of course, they're going to get their photo taken by all the paparazzi there, and we're just standing by for them to walk out. I'm going to check the time, actually. It's 1:13, so if they walk out any minute now, they're going to be right on schedule to start their final goodbyes and waving to folks, and I'm sure they're going to pause for a photo op, but this is just really amazing. Haven't seen this site since 2011 with STS-135. Of course, Doug Hurley was the pilot on that mission, so this is a really incredible moment.
And that gets back to that. Yeah, and one of the crewmates that was with him was Rex Walham that we're going to talk to later, and we have. Oh, here they come.
I feel like this is a microcosm.
Here they come, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They've each made this journey twice before for the space shuttle missions, but they've never done this in a SpaceX spacesuit. They've never done this together. and they've never done this on their way to head to a commercially built rocket and spacecraft to head to space.
Standing by for them to walk out.
I was looking for that Astro van, and I see these white Teslas with meatballs and worms on them. It's just a new era in space travel.
Oh yeah, they're riding in Tesla Model X's. They've been equipped with cooling units, so once they sit inside, that umbilical that I was referring to earlier will connect to the spacesuit to provide cooling while they're inside of the vehicle.
And you can see them talking and waving with their families now. We just saw them do a virtual hug with their sons.
Later, we have Megan and Karen. Oh, here they come. Sons, yeah.
Here they come, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley.
So awesome.
They've each made this journey twice
Bob
before
blowing his family a kiss.
shuttle missions.
Doug actually got to take his wife and son up to the to the pad on the tower. Yesterday they tweeted out a photo that was so cool.
I saw that picture, and it had a prominent worm in the picture, right?
Yes. Telling you, worm all day.
White Teslas, meatballs, and worms on them. It's just a new era.
So they're climbing through those DeLorean doors, riding in Model X. This is totally from the future.
Are they stock? Are they stock?
And then you see in the front seat there, that's our flight surgeon. He's climbing in, and the suit technicians. There's one, Chris Trigg, right there, number 12. He is buckling in. They're both, the two suit techs are buckling in, Bob and Doug, and they're connecting that umbilical.
And Lauren, I know you mentioned this earlier, but for folks that maybe weren't watching then or can't remember, I mean, we're in Florida. It's super hot, super muggy. So how are they staying cool?
Actually got.
There are these portable cooling units. We had one at the ONC building, or sorry, two at the ONC building. There are two in the Teslas. There'll be two in the elevators, and then two in the white room when they arrive on the crew arm. So we're just keeping the cool air flowing through the suits. There's actually ducting integrated into the suits to keep them cool.
So they're climbing.
And you can see they're saying goodbye to their families. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome that their families get to come up to the window and obviously get a little closer than everybody else.
There, that's our flight surgeon. He's climbing in, and the suit technicians.
Oh my gosh!
There's one right there, number 12.
This is what it's all about, as I mentioned before. It's about the people, it's about the families, and working together as one community to get Doug and Bob
Lauren,
launching off to the cosmos, to the space station.
For folks that maybe weren't watching then or
it's
can't
emotional.
Remember, it's
emotional watching
in
that.
Florida. It's super hot, super muggy. So how are they staying cool?
Here we go.
There are these portable cooling units. We had one at the ONC building, or sorry, two at the ONC building. There are two in the Teslas. There'll be two in the elevators, and then two in the white room when they arrive. Now, as we see the convoy begin the journey to the pad 39A, we are thinking about each and every one of you, our colleagues and friends at SpaceX and NASA, who have had a hand in seeing the Crew Dragon commercial crew program come to life.
And we obviously get every single one of you could be here up close to see this. But we want you to be a part of this journey regardless of where you are watching today. And so for the next few minutes, while they're making their way to the pad, we want to highlight those people whose hands and words and thoughts built all that we see here today. And we hope all of you watching can feel that pride that each of these NASA and SpaceX team members has for today.
Here we go.
This is Laura Segura from the Commercial Crew Program. We're so excited about this historical day. Congratulations on being a part of the very first mission for human space flight, commercial human space flight ever. We're behind you, Bob and Doug.
Our colleagues and friends at SpaceX and NASA, who have had a hand in seeing the Crew Dragon commercial crew program come to life.
Every single one of you could be here up close to see this.
Congratulations to SpaceX for hitting another major milestone, and safe travels to Bob and Doug.
For the next few minutes, while they're making their way to the pad, we want to highlight those people whose hands and words and thoughts built all that we see here today. And we hope all of you watching can feel that pride that each of these NASA and SpaceX team members has for today.
Space ride on a Falcon 9 coming up for Demo-2. We're so excited for you. And launch America. It's time to launch. Let's go.
Congratulations on being a part of the very first mission for human space flight, commercial human space flight.
Hi, this is Carla from Hawthorne headquarters. We want to wish Bob and Doug a safe trip to the International Space Station. Go Dragon!
It's been 9
This is such a historic time, and our team has worked so hard, and we're very excited to be here. Go Bob and Doug!
Hi, this is Sam from McGregor, Texas. Go Bob and Doug, go NASA, and go SpaceX.
Launch America, it's time to launch. Let's go.
Sean O'Rourke from Johnson Space Center. Bob and Doug, wishing you a great flight, and just want to tell you good luck.
Hi, I'm Justin Kamak with NASA Kennedy's Communications and Public Engagement Directorate, and we all want to wish Bob and Doug safe travels and Godspeed. You are both an inspiration to us all. Now, let's get out there and launch America. Let's do it. Come on.
This is such a short time, and our team has worked so hard, and we're very excited to be here. Go Bob and Doug!
And we are following the convoy. And Leland, Lauren, I don't know about you guys, but I'm so glad that we had the chance to hear from the NASA and SpaceX teams that have been working behind the scenes, because, Lauren, I know you know this all too well. I mean, these people have been working not only for, the last, since 2014 when SpaceX won this contract, but, I mean, working long hours, long reviews, coronavirus happened, and then they're homeschooling their kids, still trying to get through all the final checkouts and closeouts to get to today, and we made it. And now we're just waiting on the weather, but it's just great that they got a chance to wish Bob and Doug good luck.
Absolutely. It is a bummer that we can't all be here in person, but to have that opportunity with that wall of cheers is pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, it's been years of extremely hard work. Fortunately, we've had little milestones on the way, like Demo-2 and IFA, the in-flight abort mission, but it was all leading up to this, and I speak for all of my friends and colleagues that are still working on this program. Today is a career just high for all of those people, if not the pinnacle of it.
Absolutely, and I know Doug and Bob appreciate them so much. And as they continue to make their way to the pad, the next astronauts to make this journey are also watching very closely NASA astronauts Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, and Mike Hopkins, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi will also be flying.
Absolutely.
They'll be in the Crew 1 mission a little later this year. Of course, that's after Bob and Doug return home. Now, Crew 1 will be the second space flight for Walker and Hopkins, who each flew on the Russian Soyuz. And it will be the first space flight for Glover and the third space flight for Noguchi. He flew on both the Space Shuttle and the Soyuz previously. Now, the Crew 1 mission will be the first in a series of rotational flights to station after Demo-2, once NASA certifies the SpaceX systems for regular crew flights. And right now, Victor and Mike are following along from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and they are standing by to talk to NASA's Daryl Nail. Daryl, are you astronauts to make this journey? All right, I'm sorry, we don't have Daryl, but as we continue to follow the convoy, we've got actually a little chase car following the convoy. I think we're going to be actually talking to Victor and Mike from right here. Victor and Mike, are you there? They'll be in the Crew 1 mission a little later this year. Of course, that's after Bob and Doug. All right, hi guys. I'm just going to ask you first. You're going to be two of the next people to get on board Crew Dragon. So what are all your thoughts and feelings as you're watching Bob and Doug and the Tesla right now? Space flight for Noguchi. He flew on both the Space Shuttle and the Soyuz previously. Now, the Crew 1 mission will be the first in a series of rotational flights to station after Demo-2, once NASA certifies the SpaceX systems for regular crew flights. And right now, Victor and Mike are following along from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and they are standing by to talk to NASA's Daryl Nail.
But then there's also a bit of sensitivity of business as usual. So for us, we're going to be watching, we're going to be listening, we're going to be learning, and all of that to help get us prepared for when it's our turn.
Following the convoy, I think we're going to be actually talking to Victor and Mike from right here. Victor, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it was also great to see them walk out just now and say goodbye to their families and do the virtual hugs. That was great. There are a lot of emotions, but that's probably the best one.
You're watching Bob and Doug and the Tesla. And Victor and Mike, I know recently you had Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi also assigned to the Crew 1 mission with you. What can you tell us about them and your relationship with them and your training so far with them?
a lot of pride in yeah, you know, I'm very excited about Crew 1. We've got a very experienced crew. You guys hit on that a little bit earlier. Of course, Shannon, she's been with NASA for around 30 years. She's been with the astronaut office for more than 15 years, and of course, Soyuz long duration, so she's seen a lot around here. Soichi, you know, with Jackson, he's done it all. 1996, when he first became an astronaut, shuttle, space station, short duration, long duration, spacewalk, you name it. And so, you know, we kind of late in the game here had our full crew complement, and so it's really helped getting them in with all of that experience. It's really streamlined the process for our becoming more cohesive as a crew.
Yeah, you know, they really hit the ground running. We showed up to our first sims, and it felt like we had done it several times before. And so it's great because we do have a lot to get done. We not only have to learn to fly and to operate the Crew Dragon spacecraft that Bob and Doug are going to do later today, God willing. We also have to be ready to do all of the things that a crew on board the space station does. The spacewalks, the research, the basic upkeep of the space station. And so we also have all that training going on as well. And that's what we've been doing for the